Live, live, live. Hey, hey, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. Had a couple connection issues. They might still be occurring. You let me know. And we're going to do our best to still stream after Kelly remembers to mute her. Nope. Anybody else need to mute? I'm getting an echo, but we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so anyhow, if you can see and hear us, give us a shout out, please. We need to know that we're being heard. All right, and today I already have with me Dan, Ray, Lucy, got all sorts of people with me today. And I was kind of hoping that someone said hello. Okay, so someone's seeing us. I'm happy. All right. So what I got some feedback. Somebody mute their YouTube, please.
There we go.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I just muted it.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
It just went live on the Facebook.
Yeah, it's probably very behind. Actually, I was just talking to Dan earlier about I'll have fiber next week. Maybe that'll help. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're just glad to finally be with you here on Wine Wednesday. And this open chat.
There is a difference, Kelly.
Difference?
Kelly, there is a difference between fiber and fiber optic.
Okay. Well, Dan, we're still going to hope that it helps, all right? But
fiber optic, you check and see how much fiber you have been having.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
It's okay. But anyways, anyhow, we're trying some really cool things, but then I have to hurry up and try to fix it back up so we can get live. But now it looks like I believe we are live. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, give us a hello just so we know you see us. That'd be great.
Oops.
And
wait a sec, I got to mute again.
Yeah, keep that muted, Sir Ray. So as you can,
I'm on YouTube as well.
So as you can see, this is just an open chat. We don't have anything special going on tonight. We're gonna just chit chat, so feel free to join. I'll try to get a link up in a minute. Lucy says her connection's really bad. Mine is too. Everybody's connection's really terrible. I don't know maybe we need to check the news or something. But either way, what I did want to talk about today, we can talk about whatever you guys want, but I had an experience recently and I want some advice from all of you because I am not exceptionally good with the whole safety, electricity type situation. And I had an experience where, and this was actually in a reef tank, not a Seahorse tank, but same difference, where I put my hand in the tank, I was cleaning some things, and I got a little buzz, a little shock. And I freaked out because I thought, oh my gosh, I know this isn't set up well. I already know. I don't have the GCU connected to the IPT and all that good stuff. You know, I'm not very good at that stuff. And so I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And my significant other, who doesn't even do any of this stuff, was smart enough to realize and pinpoint that it was a cheap Jabeo power head, wave maker. I tend to go for the cheaper brands, and I'm learning my lesson as we speak. But anyways, he took it out and everything was fine. But I was just curious how you guys prepare for electrical, prepare your electrical type stuff for safety and how you check it and that kind of stuff. And Ray, do you have any thoughts on that? Just starting off, like how do you how
I don't do anything unless I get a signal. Then I just unplug one thing at a time to find out what it is.
Really? So, I mean, like using yourself as a tester?
It happens so seldom with me. Like since I started salt water in January of '94, I'll bet you I haven't had tingle. Well, haven't had it half a dozen times in all those years.
Well, now let me ask you.
I don't have any ground fault interrupters or whatever you call them. I've never used any, never hooked any in. But hell, my power heads, I've still got the power heads I started with in '94.
Wow. Well,
still using them.
I mean,
I haven't bought a power head since the '90s. I just keep on using them. They're Hagen 802s, pump out 400 gallons, and I use them for moving the water in the tanks. I use them for pumping back from the sumps up in, the return. I use them for just about everything.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I noticed is that I have a one of the like the oh I don't even know what they're called, the thing that you plug a bunch of other things into and then you keep it high on the shelf. That way it's like looped up and it's all in one that will cut if there's any kind of electrical issue. And I noticed that this pump was the only thing not plugged into it. This pump was the only thing plugged directly into the wall and it did not have the upward loop. So salt creep and all that stuff. I mean, do you do anything to prepare like and salty reef? And for anyone watching, I'm not
The
trying to
best
put
of my
down
knowledge,
Jabeo.
that
Go ahead, Ray.
that's not necessarily going to stop you from feeling a tingle though, unless the unit has a ground fault interrupter built into it, then it's not going to help stop the tingle.
Well, I'm gonna have to go.
There's a difference between a tingle and a shock.
Well, how would you define the difference, Dan?
Well, a tingle is going to give you a bite when you stick your hand in the tank. When you got full electricity running through there, you put your hand in the tank and it's like grabbing a 110 outlet. Flat out just grab it,
Yeah, well,
knock the crap
that'll
out of
fix
you.
those power bars.
Now, you can have different types of electricity within the tank. The thing you have to remember is that it gets very confusing for a lot of people. And if you read up on this, you're going to see different electricians have different thoughts on it. But you can have electricity in the water, and that, unless there's a ground, it basically, it's not doing anything. It's just potential. But if you go touch a tank with flip flops or with shoes and you're grounded, you become the ground. Now the electricity flows through you to ground. For the fish inside the tank, if it's not grounded and it's just sitting there as potential, they should not feel it. Now, some people do put a ground probe in their tanks, and the purpose of that is to take any stray electricity and take it directly to ground. But there's different ways for electricity to enter the tank. You can have a faulty piece of equipment, which in most cases is going to be a two-prong device. You want everything that I buy for my equipment, I'm looking for three prongs, so it has a grounded prong, and you have to make sure that the outlet's rounded, and that helps prevent some of this. But you can also get electricity in the tank from induction, and that can be where something doesn't have to actually touch the water, but it's close to the water, and it's that some of the electricity potential can cross over. Now, I don't know which Jabo pump you had, but most of the Jabo pumps that I've bought are all 12-volt pumps. So you're getting a lower voltage, and it does bite, but it's not going to kill you. It's uncomfortable.
Okay.
Here, I have several tanks with these skimmers with the cheap pumps, where occasionally we'll have a motor go bad, and you go to stick your hand in the tank, you get a zap. But once you put your hand in the tank and keep it there, you don't feel it. And, my wife and my daughter used to get zapped a lot more than me because they would wear flip-flops. And when I'm talking flip-flops, I'm talking about the real thin soled ones on a wet concrete floor, where I'd be wearing tennis shoes, and where they would get zapped, I would never get zapped because I was wearing tennis shoes.
So that wasn't a problem with the equipment or anything other than like the person conducting the electricity kind of thing, right?
Well, that's, when you're messing around with tanks, you shouldn't be with bare feet on a wet concrete floor. But whenever I would encounter that issue, what Ray said was appropriate. You unplug one device at a time to find out what the offending device is, and then correct it from there. Now, sometimes you can also have power strips that go bad, and the power strips can be the faulty part. Since I've pretty much done away with all power strips. I build my own electrical boxes now for each system, where I do use the GFI outlets. And if the GFIs keep getting tripped, it's one of two things: a bad GFI, or you got a faulty piece of equipment that needs to be replaced.
Gotcha. Well,
The only problem too with pump method is if you're unplugging one at a time to find it, you could still have another one. You could have two units defective and causing the problem.
Right. Well, the way
Uh,
that I do it is reverse. I unplug everything and then plug in one piece at a
yeah,
time.
that would make more sense, Dan.
Oh,
Oh, we lost the
Kelly ran away. She decided she had enough of this.
boss.
Sorry, I disappeared. What were we saying?
We said you ran away. You had enough of this.
I was trying to grab. I actually almost had a fire in my home because I had something that was supposed to cut off if if there was anything wrong, and it did not. And we actually smelled burning and happened to catch it. And this was long ago. And that's when I switched over to the actual ones that are sold as fish tank, safe type things. But I can't grab it because I realized, there's still things hooked up to it. So I can't grab it and show it to you. But yeah,
Well, I don't find, I've seen power strips that are more expensive, and I've used a variety of them, and I'm just not a fan of power strips.
gotcha.
You know, I actually take an electrical box and I put my own outlets in it and wire it myself, and it's more expensive, but the tanks that I've done that on, I've not had the issues that I've had with the power strips. I've had 3 fires from power strips.
Really?
And the big issue with those is the salt creep. And with my outlet boxes that I built, they've got the outdoor flip over covers, so everything is protected. And with the GFI built in, I've had GFIs go bad, but I haven't had issues with the outlets, getting hot and wanting to start a fire.
Well, I did want to mention because of the salty reef. You had mentioned that Jabeo products usually don't give you problems, and I'm not blaming the product. It could very well. I hadn't done a good job of taking care of that tank. It could be that it needed cleaned in the motor. Blah blah blah. Who knows? Could be salt creep because it wasn't plugged in properly. It could be a lot of things. I'm not blaming the product. I've had it for a very long time, and it's very likely my fault. But I'm just curious, because I've seen a lot of the really fancy schmancy setups too, where they use the power strips and they use them in these tiny little, like places within the sump that are specially for that. But I'm thinking, still, you got humidity and all. I don't know. I just started thinking about it and wondered what you guys do and think because it scares the crap out of me. I'm kind of scared now. I got all these tanks in the house and I'm like, oh God. So, Dan, what do you suggest for someone who can't build their own, stuff?
Have somebody else put their hand in the tank first, see if it shocks them.
Okay. Sean, no, I'm just kidding. That sounds great.
Whichever kid's being a pain in the ass at the time.
What was it?
Say whichever kid's being a pain in the ass, get them to stick their finger in.
There you go. I do like that idea. And I'm just making sure we're still live. Um, and hi, hun.
Well, the thing is, Kelly, you have to keep the strips clean. Unfortunately, salt creep is inevitable in certain areas, and placement of the power strip has a lot to do with how much it's exposed to. The problem I encounter, or I used to encounter, was the humidity levels were running almost 80% in my fish room until I, got the humidification under control, and that humidity had salt in it. So everything would rust. All my outlets and stuff would build up with salt creep, and extension cords that I've used that were plugged in, for more than a year, you go to unplug them, you couldn't because they were just welded together from the difference of the metals. Electrolysis just basically welded them together.
Oh my gosh.
So I've learned to keep the humidity down, and I've learned to cover stuff and make sure that outlets are well protected so that they're not exposed to, getting any type of direct splashing, or, if you got an airline or something, or if you got any splashing at all going in a sump and you've got an outlet or a strip down underneath the cabinet, anywhere near that, it's going to build up with salt creep eventually. Even if you don't see it as salt on the outside, it'll corrode the metals on the inside.
Jeez.
I put a double cord heat recovery ventilator in. That was back in the mid 90s.
Well, I agree with Salty. Routine maintenance on cleaning power strips and cords and stuff is very important. The other important thing to do is to make sure that all your cords have a drip loop so that you don't have water run down a cord into the outlet.
Right.
That's for sure.
And that's what I was trying to explain earlier when I was going the loop. But how can you explain that, in a little more detail for anybody who doesn't know what that means?
Well, basically, you want one part of the cord to go down lower than the power strip so that if any water gets on the cord, it's going to drip somewhere other than going down the wire into the power strip.
Okay.
And you have to make sure that no part of any of the cords are touching the another cord that might be going to the socket, because it will move from one cable to another.
That's so scary to me. I need you guys to come make sure I'm safe here. I'm telling you, because yikes. And Salty,
Well, I had
So,
one that
so,
had a loop in it, but it was just touching the wire just before it went into the plug.
Salty said
so-
never have a power strip on the floor, and I agree with that, especially
Yeah.
if I can't tell you how many times I've flooded the floor, and that could be very disastrous.
Yeah.
right. Oh gosh,
And
yeah.
I flood the floor all the time now with my MCI.
Hey, I wanted to welcome also Hunter. Hi, welcome to the channel. I did put a link up if you'd like to try to join, but one of the reasons that it's a little staticky today is that we were playing with some new tools that might make this stream really, really great. And unfortunately, then it didn't work and I had to hurry up and try to make it work. So anyways, feel free to come in if you'd like to, or we can see your questions. And we're so glad to have you, and we'll have it a little more even keel next week, hopefully. But glad to have new people always, and thank you so much for the compliment. And so we've now covered the section of Kelly's not careful enough with her electric appliances and toys. Anything else anybody wants to discuss tonight on Wine Wednesday? What are you drinking there, guys? Dan, what's in your cup?
I'm going healthy tonight. I'm doing vegetable juice, potato juice specifically.
Now, see, do you know that when you said potato juice, I seriously assumed you meant something else?
Well, it's vodka's nothing more than potato juice, isn't it?
Right. Oh, okay, so you did. Oh, no, okay. I got you. No, Ray, you drinking on water?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
What are you drinking?
That's my alarm going off. I got to feed the seahorses.
Oh,
What am I drinking? Nothing.
well, go feed your seahorses. Lucy, I know you can't talk. Lucy's having connection issues too. We're just all a mess tonight. But Lucy, what you drinking on? Give us a typed answer if you want. And yeah, so we're here for you guys. We even though we didn't get all the quirks worked out for Wine Wednesday, we are here for your questions. So tell us what you want to chat about if you don't want to join. I'm checking over here too. Looks like Facebook's a little dead tonight. That's okay. I think we started and then restarted too. I'm so sorry, guys. But anyways, Dan, anything new with you? Here comes your time on the spot.
Well, I can see, as the song says, I can see clearly now.
Are you still walking around with one glass?
Yeah, I got one lens in my glasses and no lens in the other. So, I keep saying I need to get me one of those old-fashioned lenses on a chain. Another 3 weeks or so, when I go back, they will give me a prescription for the right eye, which is the one I had surgery on, and then I'll have two lenses, and I should be even better than I am now. But I can't believe the difference. Didn't realize how bad it was until they fixed it, and how much of an effect it had. I think a lot of my vertigo issues were because of that, and it's just strange all of a sudden. Just it's hard to explain to someone until you've experienced it, how much of a difference it really makes.
I can't imagine. I can't even begin to imagine. I just think it's probably crazy. Yeah, and we talked earlier about like taking them off and such. It's well, I'm glad at least that you're doing well, you know, and recovering from everything. And man,
Well, it's pretty cool to siphon a tank and be able to siphon around the fry and not see double.
yes,
And of
that's
course,
always good.
when I'm driving, I don't have to dodge as many cars because I don't see double. Um,
Hey,
it
did you hear that, Florida?
you
It's
know
okay to
it's
go back on the road. um,
um, so I'm real happy with that. The decision I'm facing coming up is whether or not I have it done to the other eye, which you know the other eye did not have any cataract issues. And the original suggestion was to do both eyes so they would be equal, but I'm inclined not to. I don't want to, when they did the right eye, they put me under general anesthesia instead of what they normally do because of the anticipated complications, and those turned out not to be. But still, if I don't have to go back under again, I just assume not to.
gotcha. Wow, guys, I'm just letting you know if I'm missing questions because I keep seeing questions that look like somebody's talking to somebody, but I don't see the other person. Literally, my phone is like telling me to reconnect. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I do know that Living Garbage asked what our starter fish were. And I see a couple going back and forth. And before we get into that, I just wanted to make sure, Dan, I get jumping around. Did we give a good enough um, advice type situation for anyone who's setting up that doesn't have the quirks? Was the basic end result just make sure you have the loops, keep the things off the floor? I feel like I cut that off.
What? Well, in a nutshell, you do want to keep your power strips and stuff off the floor in case water gets spilled. You do want to have what's called a drip loop so that water does not travel down a wire into the power strip or outlet or whatever. You want to have your power strip away from where water can splash on it or get wet. Um, and if you are encountering a shock in the tank, the easiest way to find it is to unplug everything and then start one thing at a time to find out what the offending device is. And then, depending upon what the device is, sometimes it can be, if it's a power strip, sometimes replacing that does the trick. If it's a pump, replace the pump. Um, and then I don't know what the correct answer is on a ground probe. There are some people who advocate having a ground probe so that any current in the tank goes directly to ground, and there's others that say don't do it. So
Yeah,
I truly don't know the answer to that, and I think if you talk to different electricians, you're going to get different opinions on that.
agree. And very good advice. And no, I didn't mean to backtrack, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't cut that off because it's really important. And I talk to you guys later, and I can call you and say what do I do, but I don't ever mean to. If you feel like you didn't get an answer here, please speak up and say, so what was the answer to that? Because I do tend to get lost. Thank you, Dan, for recapping. I'll save that audio for our, for the tagline. All right. Anyhow, all right. So the starter fishies. What was your starter fish has been the question asked of the panel today. And I will go first and just say that my starter fish was freshwater angelfish. I was a freshwater angelfish love person. I bred them. Oh my gosh, I loved angelfish, the freshwater type. I just loved them. It was so cool breeding and eggs, and oh, I got into all of it. And then I moved up to discus and planet tanks, and then jumped out right into reef, and then seahorse. I found my heart. That's my big story in a nutshell. And Dan, what's your starter fish? What's the first fish?
Well, my starter fish, as far as me directly, is one thing, but if the question is starter fish for a tank, that might be a different answer.
Oh,
But no, I'm just saying. I'm just for clarity. If he means something to start the tank off with, let us know if that's the correct question. But as far as what I started with originally, I um, I started with two seahorses that Abby and I collected personally. Came home and asked my sister, "How do I set up a tank?"
yeah.
And That was my first broodstock.
I love your story, and you've told it before on this channel, and so go listen to the other Wine Wednesdays, everyone. But yeah, I know it's a great story because you've become so successful from starting, from just going out there and doing it. It's really cool. Ray, what about you? Did you do anything, any other fish before?
My very first fish that I had in the tank was, I guess, in '53. I was in grade 5, and the teacher set a tank up at the back of the classroom, and these guppies just kept on producing, and so he was giving them out to anybody in the class that wanted to set something up. And by the end of the school year, he'd gotten into swords and mollies and things like that, and so uh, my plans expanded too. That was in the back in the days when our aquariums were metal framed and it had glass putty holding the glass into the metal frame.
Wow, can't even
But
imagine.
anyway, I kept on with freshwater fish, and then eventually I started bringing home some bass and muskies that I'd catch underneath the dock up at the cottage, and bring them home, put them in tanks. Now, the muskies wouldn't grow very big in the tank because they were limited from the size of the tank, but the bass still got pretty good size. But then I found out it was against the law. But just at that time, the kids in Christmas in '93 decided that they listened to me so many times saying I was going to get into salt water and change everything over, and I never did. So they give me gift certificates for a store that sold salt water here in the city. And so January '94, I went out, bought my first stuff for the salt water and converted a 30-gallon tank over. And another month later, another 30. And then I bought a couple 90s
It's addicting.
and a couple uh, a 65 and a 75 and a 55. This was before we hit September in that year.
Wow.
And then I had more 40s and a few things. So it stayed that way until I took the interest really in the seahorses 2002. And I had to get my seahorses. I had to drive a few hours out of town to get them. And I wasn't very good at keeping seahorses when I started.
Uh-oh.
I had losses. And it took me a long time to realize that just because I'd been into salt water for a lot of years didn't automatically mean I was going to be successful in keeping seahorses. And especially, I finally realized that keeping them in the conditions that I was keeping a saltwater tank in, the reef tank or a fish only, was not suitable. So
What?
anyway, I've evolved to the point that I know I can be successful by being obsessive with my husbandry.
Very, very good
You
point.
know,
Go ahead, Dan.
I find it so interesting when I listen to other people, and my hat's off to the people that have been doing it for years and years and years. But when I started, my whole attitude was, I'm going to become a professional seahorse breeder, and I didn't have the first clue about anything. Um, it just I got into it with the intent of being a breeder, and um, even today, when people ask me about other fish and other things, I don't know much about the rest of the hobby. I know everything that applies to seahorses, but outside that realm, my knowledge is extremely limited.
Well, but it's good to have people like you that are focused and can help because you have so much experience. And Ray's experience, over the years. I mean, we've talked multiple times about how, captive bred seahorses matter so much, husbandry matters so much, feeding them enough matters so much. And, we continue to talk about this to get the word out. But, these things are really important and they do help people, I think, for sure. Uh, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to read the questions too. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, I love this one. The goldfish. Everybody's had a goldfish. Now I have to say I've had goldfish. Um, In fact, this is a funny story. When I was a paramedic, um, one of the guys I worked with was going out of town for a vacation. So he had four goldfish in a 10-gallon tank in his house. So the pool was closed and he had a cover on it. And he just threw the goldfish in the swimming pool. And when he got back, he forgot about it and he left the fish in there through the winter. And come springtime, he took the cover off the pool and there was four goldfish the size of koi. There was 100 the size that he put in there, and there were so many babies he couldn't count them.
Oh my gosh.
And each fire station had a little pond out in front of it, and um, as a paramedic we would rotate around the different stations. At every one of those, I didn't know anything about filtration or anything else. I just filled them up with water and put the goldfish in them, and every fire station had goldfish, and he was giving away goldfish for months. um, but it was goldfish will live almost through anything.
That's the one thing I never kept. My girls when they wanted fish, I got them betas, however you say it, however they pronounce it these days. But I never did have goldfish. Funny enough, so I must be the oddball.
Well,
Salty didn't either.
down here at the county fair, everybody threw the ping pongs and got a goldfish and took them home and put them in a bowl.
Right.
Um, but there was no filter. You were changing the water, and some people would have them for a week, some people would have them for a few months. But none of us had, nobody had any filtration or anything. It was just changing the water out.
See, and that's we've talked multiple times about how people that have been around for a while typically miss that forum situation where the experts were the experts and people who've been around. Ooh, that's an alarm. Loud alarm. People who have been around for a while, give the advice, and you can tell who's who. But one of the good things that came from all of these groups is that there is a lot of good information that gets floated, like that's heck. I'm not into goldfish or betas, however you say it, or whatever. But I know there are multiple groups where they're very serious about you can't just do that anymore. You can't just throw them in a bowl and call it a day, So I mean that's a good thing, I guess.
Well, it wasn't really cool what they were doing. I mean, back then nobody thought twice about it.
Right.
I mean, basically, most of those goldfish are doomed.
I know.
But I encountered something similar once where I had a golf club um, that was putting on a big banquet, and they wanted to put a bowl on each table, or a vase or vase, whatever the hell you call it, and they wanted to put two seahorses in that on each table, and let one person from the table be able to take that home.
Mm-mm.
And I went round and around with them, trying to explain things, and finally I just said, look, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to have
Right.
to go find somebody else.
Hmm.
Because nobody has a tank or anything. They're just going to put two seahorses in a thing, and the winner of each table gets to take them home.
Wow. I wonder if they got anybody to do it. I mean, I'm sure they probably did, unfortunately, but
I don't know what the final outcome was. I mean, I would have made money. I would have made good money from it, but it would have been doomed for each of the animals.
yeah. And that's what Salty just mentioned in the comments that goldfish and bettas are the most mistreated fish. I mean, seahorses, hey, but yeah, I would have to agree because, I don't know. I think it was Richard Ross wrote a really great article. It might not have been Richard Ross. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was a really great article. I know Christine Williams, too, did a podcast about it, about how you look at things based on what is socially acceptable at the time. I mean, in some places, if a fish is a feeder, if you've got a lionfish, I'm feeding them certain things, and other people who keep that thing as a pet might not think that's okay. Or if you go somewhere else and this personal delicacy is something that we care about as tank fish in different areas, it just whatever. But there are bottom line husbandry things that if you're going to keep them in aquariums, you should follow. So I do agree that they're very mistreated, and yeah, that's why we talk about it, right? Right. What were you gonna say, Dan? I heard you getting ready.
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I wasn't.
Well, I was just rambling anyways. Ray, was that your loud alarm?
Pardon
That may
me?
have been my AC turning on.
Oh, okay. I just wondered. Are the seahorses all?
No, mine was 10 o'clock.
Huh?
My last alarm was at 9 o'clock.
Okay. I just wondered. No big deal. Anyhow, all right. Well, I missed any questions? Or anybody else got anything they want to chit chat about? Thoughts? I feel like it's really a bad connection tonight, so I'm not sure. But if you want to chit chat anymore, anybody? Ray, anything new with you or your seahorses at all?
Nope, nothing changed.
I know it's kind of hard because once you get to where you're doing things well, it's like, well, they're still good. They're awesome. Um,
The algae growth is less in the tank, but that's the only thing.
the what?
The algae growth.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Remember before I was telling you I was getting the film I'd have to clean after 4 days.
yes.
Well, now it was a week ago Tuesday when I did it, and there's virtually none there showing there at all now. I don't know whether you can see it or not here. Wait a second. On the wrong thing here.
Oh my goodness.
It doesn't show, and I can't move the camera over to it.
I was gonna say, to be completely honest, I don't even know if this is picking up anything. Okay, I guess it is. I'm sorry. Anyways, so it's less now though. It's doing better.
Yeah, and I haven't done anything different.
Really?
I change the water every 9 days. I was doing it every 7 days, and for a few years, and then I finally decided to push the envelope a bit. I went to 10 days, and had pouch emphysema. So I went cut it back a day to 9, and I've never had anything since.
Wow.
Just keeping it to 9 days.
You know, with all the talk about we do a lot of talking about setting up tanks and maintenance on tanks, and I just gotta say, I have a couple of tanks. I'm sorry, I just have to say that maturity and an established tank, when it's truly established, like you've got media that's been, happening for a while and cycled for a really long time, or the tank's been set up for a long time, there is something to be said for it, because I have a few tanks that I just don't really do much to. And they run better than any of my other newer, gadgety tanks, because they're just natural and they just run. And it's just, I don't know, kind of cool the way
With reef
bacteria
tanks, I
trumps
found
all. Huh?
I found that with my reef tanks.
Well, and I didn't mean
On
you don't
average,
have to
it
do.
took at least about a year to a year and a half to get to what I considered mature enough to lose the problems that the earlier stages had. But this tank, like these seahorses, have been in that now for over 3 years.
Wow,
So,
very cool. Hi, Cruz.
but then again, I have to do the water changes more than normal because there's so many in it.
Gotcha. Right. I mean, you
It's a
keep more than
round
the.
towel with seven barbs in it.
Yeah, you.
Well, the nitrifying bacteria will seed themselves pretty quickly, but the denitrifiers take much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely, and look, Cruz came just at the right time. But it depends on your goals, of course, as always. There's different situations. I just personally have noticed that the tanks that were seated and set up properly, that have been going for a long time, just seem to run better and more efficiently. Once you get a process and you get that stability going, and there's some sort of ecosystem kind of functioning, it just kind of clicks. But yes, hi Cruz.
Well, mine never was set up before I got them.
What'd you say?
I didn't set mine up in advance. Well, I set it up the day before I went to Toronto to pick up the seahorses at the airport.
Well, right, and I'm not saying you can't do that, but I don't know. I don't know what my point was. I guess just that once it does hit that established point, oh, Cruz, you're so sweet. Thank you. Mwah. Especially since we have got such terrible connection tonight. I'm so sorry. But you're awesome. Thank you, Cruz, for supporting the channel. And I do agree with you. Most of my tanks were set up very quickly using certain things. I was just making the point that once it's established, I don't know, it just seems to roll better for
Yeah.
me.
Well, I'll use Forum X to get it through. So in other words, the seahorses were in on day 2 and it hadn't been cycled. So I monitored every single day, um, checking for ammonia and making sure there was enough Formex to neutralize any ammonia in there. And I just kept on doing that every day until finally it didn't need the ammonia anymore.
Right. Now,
That was probably about 2.5 months.
Now I'm curious, Dana. I want to ask you that. Do you think that I know that obviously these detoxifiers and such will make it safe for the seahorses, but does it affect them? I know that when I first started, I'm just recalling when I first started with seahorses, I had an issue where I just could not get that tank to stop having nitrites. And we figured out that it was because I was using things like Prime. Do you remember this or no?
Well, the problem with nitrites is that a lot of people don't realize when they're trying to cycle a tank, the molecular weight between ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate is each different. And most people cycle their tanks based on ammonia levels, where I do it based on nitrate levels, because 1 milligram or one part per million of ammonia will turn into 2.7 parts per million of nitrite. So a lot of people get their nitrites way off the scale. And if the nitrites get too heavy or too high, they can actually slow down the cycle of the nitrification bacteria that converts them. So if you've put anything in there like Prime or Amquel Plus, or any of those, sometimes that will throw your reading of your test kits off, and you're sitting there constantly trying to figure out where you are. You really don't know where you are. And that's why I do such low dosing with ammonia, and I wait for the ammonia to go from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate before I add another dose of ammonia. The
Very good
ammonia
advice.
bacteria colonizes itself almost 2.5 times faster than the nitrites bacteria, or the nitrobacter, whatever you want to
Right.
call it. Um, so it really throws people for a loop when they go follow the directions of just keep dumping ammonia, and quite often the nitrites are so high they don't realize how high they are.
Yeah.
And if my nitrites get off the scale, I do a water change and bring them back down to where I can read them, and wait for them to settle down before I redose with more ammonia.
Gotcha. I mean, very, very good advice because I just remember that that I had problems personally with that when I first started out. Um,
Well, with us, it's a little bit different. Ray was talking about getting, fish, putting them in the tank right away. It's in a commercial enterprise. It's a lot different than a home situation. We can't wait for a tank to mature.
right.
Very often I have to sterilize the system, take it down, bring it back up, and put fish in it, and sometimes hundreds of fish. And when I say fish, of course, I'm talking about seahorses, but it um, I have to do it, and they have to survive, or I don't make money. So, we learn the ins and outs and the tricks. Same thing the USDA does when they're doing their experiments and whatnot. You know, where we take live bacteria, or we take pre-cycled media that has been cycled with using strictly ammonia, no foods or anything like that, and go with it. And we have to be correct, and we have to keep the nitrites down in order for it to work. And most people that I encounter, when I'm helping people cycle a tank, the biggest problem for most people is always the nitrites.
Hmm.
And it's easily to overcome if you know what you're doing.
Very, very good. Good advice all the way around. I couldn't agree more. You helped me tremendously because I didn't understand all of that when I started, and I couldn't figure out why the stuff wasn't working. Hey, Ray, and there's no right, wrong, or equal ways to do things. Obviously, your seahorses do very well. Do you test for nitrites?
In that particular case, it's the only tank I ever did that way.
No.
I have a bottle of ammonium chloride powder that I bought back in '94, and that's what I've used through my whole career to set up a tank until I ended up the tanks that the seahorses were going into. Ended up with a problem, and I was sitting there trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do. And I had Chloromax anyway because I use it for when I was shipping seahorses, mainly because earlier in my hobby I found um, fish that was being shipped, fish that were being shipped from offshore. Their primary drug, or I guess additive that they would put in the shipping bags was the Chloromex because uh, it was there to take care of the ammonia that became more lethal when people opened up the shipping bags.
Right, right.
And the industry found that Chloromex was the best one for it. So I figured, well, what's good enough for them was good enough for me.
Yeah,
So I
Now,
I'm not trying to at all say you're wrong or anything like that. I honestly was asking you because I think that most people don't test nitrites. I really think that
wh-
people don't. Go ahead, Dan.
well, I the biggest problem I have in dealing with customers is that they get confused between nitrites and nitrates,
Mm,
and quite often they interchange the two. The other issue that I find with customers is that people will set up a tank and they will call me up and say, I'm ready for my seahorses. My tank's been sitting there now for 3 months and it's all completed its cycle. And and then my question is, well, how much ammonia can it handle? And of course, the obvious answer is, what do you mean?
great.
And what I have them do is challenge the tank. And by challenging the tank, we introduce ammonia to see if it will, how fast it will cycle through that ammonia. So um, I know from experience and from basic calculations that a cube of mice is going to produce roughly 27 milligrams of ammonia. So if somebody calls me up and they have a 30-gallon tank and they're going to start dumping 3 cubes of mice in there a day feeding seahorses, I know it has to be able to handle 3 times 27. So what I'll do is have them dose the tanks till they reach 1 part per million, and then wait 24 hours and see if it completes the cycle of converting it from ammonia to nitrate to nitrate. If it does, then 30-gallon tank, that's roughly about 1 part per million, should be about 114 milligrams of ammonia. And that tank should be able to, if it can do that, it should be able to handle 4 cubes of myces per day. Um, Quite often, I get calls from people who have a tank that are set up. They put seahorses in it, and now they have a problem with the seahorses because they don't understand that even though the tank is cycled, it's not cycled to the point, and the bacteria are not built up to the point to handle the load that they're feeding it.
Perfect advice. I'm listening to you. I just saw that there's literally comments that I'm not seeing. I really apologize, anyone that I'm not seeing the comments. But yeah, no, that's absolutely. And I will tell anyone out there, if you're having someone like Dan from Seahorse Source help you with cycling a tank, please don't be offended because I'll tell you, he still does this to me. I'll call him and say, I need some seahorses. And it's like, oh, yeah? What tank you putting them in? How much cycle is it? What was in it before, Kelly? What are you doing? I promise. So don't feel bad. He just
Well,
cares.
I tell you what, by speaking to people and by going over this stuff, I've headed off so many problems
Mhm.
that it's unbelievable.
No,
I've
yeah.
had people who, no, I kid you not, I've had people that had no clue what cycle was. I've had people that call me up, want seahorses. They're gonna put them in their tank. I ask them a couple questions later. I find out it's a freshwater tank. Um, I got people that take tap water that live, using municipal water, put it in their tank and think it's ready.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of things that um, I'm able to overcome before it becomes a problem by talking to people.
Got hey, right. No, and I made it a funny, but no, I was being serious. You've saved me even recently where I was going to put a species into a tank because it was so established that it had a species that wouldn't mix well before, and you walked me through using probiotics and cleaning the system, and so yeah, no, very very
Well,
helpful
I can
advice
tell you
always.
this. I can tell you this: 9 out of 10 customers that call me up that tell me that their tank has been sitting for 3 months and is now ready for seahorses. If I have them challenge the tank,
Yeah,
9 out of 10 will fail the challenge
yeah, which is
because they
scary.
haven't been feeding. Right. Well, they haven't been feeding the bacteria.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know it. I know exactly. You're right. Yeah, I know. I did it.
And most folks don't realize that seahorses put a higher demand biologically on the system than fish do,
Right.
regular fish.
Yep. Things you can get away with in a reef tank, you just can't get away with in just a seahorse tank. And I absolutely agree. Um, yeah, that's all. I just agree. And I want to say, Cruz, if you're still there, I'm sorry, my mind went off on something else. I apologize, but I wanted to say, still wanting you to come in here as a guest and talk to us about some miracle mud and such. We're playing with some different G Suite stuff, and that's why tonight's so shaky. Is I had to hurry up and put it all back together to stream because it wasn't ready. But I just want you to know, I see you, appreciate you, and still want you to come on and talk to us soon. I just want to get it right first. And cheers. All right, now I got my shout out. So how many times, Dan, when you go through the process of making sure that the person is actually ready for seahorses, how many times do they end up not buying? Is it often? I mean, do you like kick
Well,
yourself in
no,
the foot?
if now it happens probably well under 10%, probably closer to about 3 or 4%. Um, but I would say a large percentage of people that call me up under that circumstance, if they haven't spoken to me before, when I go through it, there's some people that are adding seahorses to existing seahorse tank. That's different. But with people setting up a tank from the scratch, from the beginning, that call me up to order seahorses, I'd probably say 8 to 9 out of 10. We have to wait a week or two before we ship until they get the tank uh, biologically ready.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I mean, but as Salty pointed out in the comments, that's the kind of customer service that makes repeat customers. I mean, you don't even
It does, it does. But I'll also say this is that it also costs me business
sure.
because people can't just go online, order, it arrives, and there's a 2 week guarantee. And if they die, I'll just ship them new ones. Um, there's a lot of people that do that with places like Live Aquaria where their tank is really not ready and they lose fish because of it. Um, when my replacement rate is well under a fraction of 1%. And even then, most of the replacements really weren't my fault. It's just me just trying to make somebody happy and get the word out.
Right. I was going to say some of those places are smartening up though. They haven't changed the way they sell per se, but you find out later that their their replacement has changed. And now they want you to do a bunch of things to prove that your water's this way or you didn't do this. And I mean, it's not really fair because they don't warn you in advance, but you know.
Right, but it leaves a bad taste in a customer's mouth if he orders something and if on the surface it says 2 week guarantee, and then the company comes back and says, "Hey, we're not going to honor that because you didn't do this, that, or the other."
Yep.
And unfortunately, that leaves a bad taste in the customer. The customer speaks badly of the company, and it's really not a good situation. And you know, as I said, I lose business because I speak to every customer before I ship, but I have very few failures as a result of that.
And you make lifetime seahorse keepers like moi. And Salty, I want to acknowledge that you said the exact same thing right before Dan did. So, great advice, folks. Um, anyways, well, I mean, I'm glad that we have some good vendors and breeders who are doing things the way that you do them. I wish I could tell everybody, because it's the way it should go. But anyways, I don't know. I feel really badly because I feel like I can't see all the questions and answers and such. Anybody
I
else?
think you're cover. I think you're covering everything I've seen.
Okay, good, good. Okay, it might just be me. But
What I'm not seeing is any activity on Facebook.
okay. Well, that's probably because I started and then restarted, maybe. Uh, oh, Adam made a comment. See, I mean, well, I'll just again say
I
sorry,
don't see
guys.
Adam.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't either. That's what I mean. So if you're saying something on Facebook, really apologies, guys. We'll have this fixed by next week. We had everything set up, and then I found out I had to do something first to get the good stuff rolling. So next week we should be all squared away. Um, but thank you for coming either way. And did you guys have anything? We've been going for hour and a half, hour-ish now. Anything else you guys want to chit chat about, or you want to call it before it gets too late and pick up next week?
Up to you guys.
Anybody in
I
the?
still got more potato juice.
I have one thing to ask though.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're not going to be on a Wednesday night, can you post it?
Yes, I'm sorry. Ray, I'm sorry. Last week, literally, Lucy was messaging me and saying, "Are we gonna do Wine Wednesday?" And I was literally saying, "I'm trying. Look," and my connection was so bad that it just would not connect. So, but I'm not gonna sit here and go through it again. Yes, I will do my very best to make sure that there is at least a post, if not better, by next week. If there's not going to be a Wine Wednesday.
You could even post if there's going to be a delay.
Yes, sir. I could, and I will try. Or Lucy, this is
But
now
there's
your
people that
job.
think that they're trying to go on for half an hour and not making it.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen. You're absolutely right, Ray. I agree. Couldn't agree more. And Salty Reef said he was told that Petco is actually going to have a questionnaire to fill out before you can buy saltwater fish soon. Uh, Good. Didn't somebody buy Petco? No, PetSmart. Somebody bought somebody recently.
Well, I don't know if it's true, but I heard that Ocean Rider requires you to take their course before you buy their seahorses.
Really?
And while I don't necessarily agree with everything in the course, I do think that there's some benefit to that. It there's the problem with online ordering is that anybody can just click, 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 and have something show up at their house. I had a company in New York that wanted me to sell them dwarf seahorses, and they were going to sell a kit where people could order the kit. The kit shows up at their house with a tank and stand and everything, and then a couple days later, the seahorses arrive. And I had the hardest time trying to get those people to understand that just didn't work that way. And ultimately, I walked away, and another vendor accepted the deal, and it was a complete disaster because everybody lost their fish right away.
Right.
I see Restream bot. What's that? Holly.
That is gonna go away next week, so we won't worry about it. But it's when Facebook's talking to us. It's coming through the
Ah,
restream.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is, but it probably will be gone next week. So don't get too used to it. um, and hopefully it'll be better. We're gonna play with it this week and hopefully make it better. But no, I agree with you. And actually, though, with Ocean Rider, I've purchased from them and I didn't complete their course. So
Right. Well, I understand recently they started doing that, and I don't know if it's mandatory. They've had the course for a while. I took it. I emailed Pete and asked him if I could, and my primary reason was to understand what they were advising people And I explained to Pete that I wanted to know what they were telling people so I would know what I'm telling people and where our differences were. And Pete sent me the course and I took it. Um, no, I don't
I
agree with
think
everything in their
Pete's problem
course,
is
but
he hasn't changed much with the time.
what's that?
I think Pete is still too set in the way things were, not the way things are.
Pete is.
Pete's a great guy, but you got to remember Pete's an author,
Mhm.
and Pete is basically regurgitating from people he's interviewed and talked with and what have you. I don't think that Pete is a um, professional seahorse keeper. Let's put it that way.
I see.
Um,
Yeah, and
you
we're
notice he cites everybody he gets information from, and some of his information has become very dated. But you also got to understand that Pete is probably not a young fellow, and it's the hobby itself has changed drastically from when he's written his books. His last book that he wrote was I think 800 some odd pages, and tropical fish hobbyists refused to print it that, and they tried to edit it down, and then they ended up with a legal battle to where he could buy the rights back because he did not want to edit it down.
my story about Pete, I actually have nothing bad to say about him because he was very very kind to me the last time I spoke to him. But he was actually the one that told me before I met you, Dan, before I got into the groups and met you, and when I just had Felicia. Felicia was the only person helping me, and I had seahorses, and it was before I bought the two from you, my first two that were not wild. And I approached Pete because my seahorses had babies, and I was trying to do things a certain way that was not right. But either way, he sent me all this information. I mean, like just books of information about how to set up a nursery. And I explained to him, no, I'm actually past that stage. I'm to the point where they're ready to wean, and I need to know how to set up the rearing tank, or whatnot. And he said, "Oh, yeah, you're not going to be able to accomplish that at home," is basically what he told me. And it really bothered and upset me. But to be clear, since then, I have bought from Ocean Rider and actually had an issue, and he was very kind and helpful. So, no harm, no foul, but it just, he doesn't even think hobbyists can do it at home. And obviously, that's not true.
No, I don't know that that's true, Kelly. Pete's actually a very good guy.
No,
Um,
I'm saying he
the problem
is. He
is
is.
right. Well, the problem is that he's working within the confines and the constraints of being a ocean rider representative,
Right. Okay. Right.
and that in itself is not necessarily bad, but that limits what he can say, what he can do, and what have you.
Right. He couldn't walk
Um,
me through something because that's proprietary, probably. I didn't mean to make it sound like I was talking
well,
trash.
ocean if you, Ocean Rider used to have it within their thing where you could not supposedly legally breed their seahorses.
I think that's still true. I think you're still not supposed to. But no,
Different attitude,
yeah, it is what it
the,
is.
the, the hobby itself, there's many people in aquaculture that do not want trade secrets, quote unquote trade secrets, released. But and I caught a lot of flack the first article I did on breeding seahorses because they said now everybody's going to breed them. Well, seahorses are not the easiest creature to breed. Even if you have step by step instructions, you still doesn't mean you're going to have success breeding them. It's much more complicated than just following instructions. There's some intuitiveness involved as well as some very finite details that if you skip one step, the end result is not good.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, and I certainly didn't mean to be saying anything that sounded badly because, anybody who's trying to help people, good, yay, thumbs up. That's all I got tonight. But
Well, he has helped a lot of people.
yes, absolutely, absolutely, and there are just differences of opinion in different areas. So we'll just kind of go with the flow, and I'll keep putting you guys on spotlight so that what you're saying reaches more people. There we go. That's where we're gonna go with this. Um, And I'm curious, Salty, you met me at a frag swap? What? I haven't gone anywhere this year. So I'm curious. I know we've met, but huh. All right. Anyways, guys, okay, well, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Oh, Felicia.
Felicia,
Oh, okay, yes, yes. Felicia's
she's a
amazing.
great gal.
Yeah, she's great. She was my first mentor and great lady, great lady. I really wanted to do some big things with her at Macna, but it's fast approaching, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get there. I'm gonna try, still certainly, but we shall see.
I think I got to meet Felicia as well as Tammy Weiss,
Hmm.
and there was a bunch of other Seahorse.org members back in 2005, back when they used to have IMAC in Chicago.
Yeah, she's been doing this a long time. I think she works for, I think she's actually professionally attached now to the industry.
What
Um,
was she? She used to be the photographer for Live Aquarium.
right. I think she's a writer. I think she writes for someone now, but I know she does the oh my gosh, I'm not gonna remember this now. She's with, why am I wanting to say, oh gosh. Coral Magazine, I think, maybe? Oh, I'm gonna feel terrible if I'm wrong. I'm so sorry if I'm getting this wrong. Now I feel bad. I'm gonna have to Google it. I'm gonna stop this in a second, guys, but now I'm gonna have to Google it because now I'm gonna feel terrible if I get this wrong. Let's see. Uh,
I'm gonna sign off here and take the dog do his chores.
Go ahead, Ray. I'll make sure it's
So,
more clear next week, and if we're not gonna do it, then you will know via post or something
okay,
else. I give you my
great.
word. All right, and
Okay,
it doesn't.
good night all.
Good night. It doesn't say on for Felicia's profile, so I'm gonna just shut up because maybe she doesn't want people to know that. Sorry. But
Well, Salty said it's Coral Magazine.
okay, all right. Well, we'll just leave it there. And say go to Macna if you want to meet Felicia. Now she's gonna get stalked. Sorry, my love. Sorry. But okay. Well, I'm gonna cut it short, guys. Sorry for the bad connection, and we will be back next week with a little more even keel and further instruction on how to join or ask questions and such. We're gonna pick away this week and stick with it. That is what my goal is for the week. So you guys make your goals, come share them with me next week. And Dan, you want to say anything else?
Good night.
Good night, says Potato Juice Head. All right. Happy Wine Wednesday, everybody. Night. Cheers. Okay.